Great. In the previous lecture, we looked at how to work with question banks in Moodle. Okay. In this lecture, we will take it to the next level and see how to work with assessment instruments in Moodle. We are going to be looking at two specific assessment instruments which are generally quite useful. We will be looking at them in depth. One is quiz and the other one is assignment. Quiz is an online synchronous assessment activity. Okay. By online synchronous assessment activity, what we mean is that we will administer the quiz and we expect the students to assemble somewhere and it is answered, responded to in an online mode, but in a synchronous manner, which means that the questions are posted and then they will have to give the response within a specific amount of time. So that is what we mean by online synchronous activity. And assignment is considered to be an offline asynchronous activity, which is similar to a homework. So we don't expect them to come to an examination hall or even log in online between certain times to give their responses and so on. We give them some activity, they will complete it, and then they will upload their responses. So when it comes to managing assessment instruments, first thing we will be looking at managing quizzes, we just have the first activity of creating a quiz activity, which includes adding questions to the quiz and also configuring the settings like timings, duration, and so on. And then the evaluation part of it, pretty much we will be looking at the auto evaluation option, which means that we'll assume the quiz contains questions which can be auto evaluated. If you recall, in the previous lecture, we looked at certain specific question types which are amenable for automatic evaluation. And we looked at multiple choice questions as one such example. So if you have a quiz which contains all auto-evaluatable question types, then the quiz itself becomes auto-evaluated. So once we execute the auto-evaluation, then we will view or download the results. But when it comes to assignments, as if you recall, assignment is an offline activity, then we will create the assignment, which means giving a problem statement and configuring the settings like deadlines, what is it that they should upload. And once they have uploaded, then we will be able to view and download the submissions and carry out the evaluation. So here the evaluation will be manual evaluation. Okay, so let's jump on to the demonstration of quizzes and assignments in Moodle. So I'm in a demo course right here, and inside the demo course I have created a category called as a topic called Moodle demo. So before we are able to add quiz, you should make sure that your editing setting is turned on, which I have already done. So normally when you have logged in, this is the state in which it will be. You will not be able to add any activities. So make sure to turn editing on after you log into your respective course, and you will see that there is a button link called Add an Activity or a Resource. So we'll click on that. So you will see that by default Moodle supports so many activities. If I click on activities, it supports so many activities, right? So we are going to be looking at we will be looking at the quiz activity. So I'll click on the quiz activity. So when you click on that, this is the screen that will open up. Okay, so you can give some name to this particular quiz, whatever it is. You say that you can give it a number, you say quiz number 2, something like that, and you can give a brief description of the quiz. So this is the second quiz on, this is the second quiz, or whatever description you want to give. If you want to display that on the course page, you can do that. And then in terms of the timing, okay, so in terms of the timing, these are the settings that are available. Now, you can create this quiz as a formative activity or as a summative activity, right? What do we mean by formative activity? Formative activity is in between the course. You want to create this particular quiz, which is more for self-assessment. Okay, so when it is for self-assessment, generally you don't put any time limits. Many of the settings that I'm going to be showing will not be applicable. Okay, which means that there is no restriction on the timings of when they can take that quiz. There won't be any restriction on the duration for the quiz. And in terms of the feedback also, generally we will release the feedback immediately, right? So none of those restrictions settings that I'm going to do actually will be applicable. Okay, now what I'm going to assume is that we are almost creating a summative kind of an assessment wherein we want to put a lot of restrictions, which means that I'm going to assume that this is going to be conducted in a proctored, restricted environment. Okay, I'm going to also assume to that this is possibly being conducted in a restricted, proctored lab, in a computer lab setting, and not using their own laptops. Okay, wherein you will have, so which means that if it is a controlled lab environment, we are assuming there is no access to the internet, etc., etc. Right? So now, assuming that this is that kind of a setting, then we will enable many of these settings. So I will walk you through the meaning of each of these settings. So firstly, we will enable when the quiz will be opened. Okay, so let us assume that we'll set a particular date. So let us say I'm going to set say March 1st, Monday, March the 2nd as the date. And I will say the quiz will open at say 9 a.m. I'm going to set it to 0. And I will also say that the quiz will close on the same day at March 2nd at 11 a.m. Okay. So, and also there is another parameter called time limit. So I'll say the time limit for this particular quiz is 60 minutes. Okay, not 600 minutes. So I'll remove one 0 and then I'll set it to 11. Okay. Now you will notice that the time duration between close the quiz and open the quiz is 2 hours. Okay, and I've set the time limit as 60. So what is the difference between the two? So many times there is some confusion between the time limit and the open quiz and close the quiz. So many times people will do that. If I want to do a 1-hour quiz, people will set this time, open the quiz at 9 a.m. and close the quiz exactly after 1 hour at 10 a.m. Instead of that, what we should be doing is, we should be doing the time limit for the quiz as 60 minutes and set the open and close the duration with a slightly extended window. So what is the advantage, what is the benefit of doing this particular setting is that now what this open quiz and close the quiz indicates is that the time duration between which anybody can access the quiz. So it may so happen that students may be a few minutes late, right? So they come at say 9:05 a.m., right? Although you said that they should all be there for the quiz at 9 a.m. If you set the quiz at 9:05 a.m., then what they will do is they will have access, the quiz will be available for them only for 55 minutes, although you intended it to be 60 minutes. This also gives you some amount of buffer time to account for some login problems. Some people may have password issues and internet issues, network issues and things like that. So it gives you a little bit of a buffer. So you make sure that the open and close quiz, the time duration that is available between the opening and the closing the quiz allows for some buffer to address some problems. This time limit will kick in only after they start the quiz. Okay, there is a difference between opening the quiz and starting the quiz, which I will demonstrate later on from a student's perspective. But this setting determines the time available for them to answer the questions the moment they start the quiz. Okay, so this is a useful setting. It is useful to understand the difference between the three. And this setting, when the time expires, the default setting, you can leave it at open attempts are submitted automatically. Now, in case you want to create multiple grade categories, you can do that. But right now, we will leave it at uncategorized. Okay, you can set grade to pass. Many of these things are with respect to what do you want to do with the marks that are obtained. Okay, and until we are fully conversant with these settings, I would recommend that we will assume that we will download the results, say, into Excel and then process it. So this is mainly for grades processing. I'm not going to be focusing on the grade processing as part of this particular lecture. So I'm not going to set any of those values. This attempts allowed is something that is important. Okay. I told you that if you are going to set this up quiz for self-learning, then typically you may want to leave it at unlimited number of attempts. So this will usually work well if you have configured when at the time of creating the questions, if you have given detailed responses to why certain answers are wrong, if you have given detailed feedback, then students can use this feedback and attempt the question again as part of the learning process. But if you are conducting this particular quiz as a summative final exam, then in that case, you may want to put a restriction that it should be only a single attempt. Okay, but then if you really want to give more than attempts, then you will have multiple options, whether you want to take the highest grade, average grade, first attempt, last attempt. These settings are all there. But I will just set it back to only one attempt, saying that this will be the final exam. Okay, so this is the grade setting. So we have seen the timing configuration, we have seen the grading configuration. The next important setting that I want to focus on is the layout. Okay, so the layout indicates how the quiz questions appear to the student taking the exam. Okay, for the student taking the exam, if you want the questions to appear, one question to appear in every page, then you can set it as every question, 2 questions, 3 questions, 4 questions in every screen. I will tell you what is the implication of this setting. Okay, it depends upon how, if you are, again, as I said, if I am assuming that this is an examination setting, and if I assume that this examination is being conducted in a lab, not on their own laptops sitting wherever they are, if they are coming to a specific computer lab where they are taking the exam, so it is this setting determines, you should assume that maybe the students are sitting very close to each other. So we may not want to reveal more than one question in a single screen, so that the neighboring students will be looking at each other's screens to see what answers are being written. Okay, so that is the reason why it is useful to limit the number of questions to one question per screen. So what will happen is that the students will see a question, they will respond to that, and then they will click on next to look at the next question, as opposed to seeing 3 or 4 questions at a time, depending on the setting. So I would recommend that typically in an examination setting, it is useful to set it to every question. And if it is a summative kind of a learning wherein you don't really mind, you can do it more than one question per screen. And I would also recommend that you click on show more, which is again a very important, it reveals a very important setting called as the navigation method. Okay, navigation method, it has got 2 options called free and sequential. Okay, suppose your quiz contains 10 multiple choice questions. So when you are setting the free option, then students will be able to go back and forth. between the questions and answer them in any order that they want. Okay, so that setting is something which is not a preferred setting, especially when you have students sitting close to each other in an examination hall. So what may happen is that a student who has quickly answered all the questions may go back and forth and reveal answers to the questions to their neighbors. Okay, so which is not a very desirable situation. So typically in your examinations, please set the settings to remember to set it as sequential. Once again, if it is for self-learning and there are no grading implications, then you can obviously leave it as a free navigation. Okay, and whenever you have any doubt, feel free to click on the question mark. It will display exactly what does it mean. So here it clearly says, when sequential navigation is enabled, a student must progress through the quiz in the order and may not return to the previous pages nor skip ahead. Okay, and whenever you are using this particular setting, please make it a point to clearly announce, especially this is the section that I would use to give the instructions. So you can clearly mention the instructions in big bold font that so this question, this quiz uses sequential access. Okay, so and then you can give more description and warn the students that they should not blindly click on next and they will not be able to come back, and announce it in the class, put it out here in bold. But this is extremely important because once the quiz starts, you cannot do anything. Okay, so that is why this setting is useful and important. Okay, so we have seen the timings, we have seen the grade. In the timings, we said that it is recommended that you enable both open and close, and also the time limit as 3 separate settings. Okay, and in grading, we said that we should set the number of attempts to 1 for summative assessments, and also the layout to every question and navigation method to sequential. Okay, let us move on to the last setting which we will use is the review options. Okay, so this talks about what are the review options you are going to give to the students. Okay, once again we will talk about 2 settings. One is the self-learning setting and another is the final exam setting. In the learning self-learning setting, you can enable so many things, right? They will be able to see what is their own response, whether it is correct or not, what is the number of marks that they obtained. You remember when we are creating the question, we said that even for MCQs, we can set up partial marking and so on. So they will be able to see how many marks they received for each assessment item, and any feedback that you have given, specific feedback, generic feedback, what is the right answer, and what is the overall quiz feedback. Okay, all of these things can be revealed immediately after the attempt. You can choose to do it immediately after the attempt, later on while the quiz is still open, or after the quiz is closed. Okay, and typically if it for self-learning, you would generally use this particular option. Instead of revealing everything immediately, you will do it after the you may not want to do it immediately after the attempt, but after the quiz is completed, while the quiz is still open, they will be able to look at the whole thing. Here, after every attempt, it will immediately show that. Okay, but if we are doing it in an examination setting, we generally want to turn off the whole thing. Okay, they generally don't want to give any feedback at all. Okay, and you may have your own mechanism to announce the results, right? And I will cover that part of it, right? So once the quiz is done, how do you look at the result, how do you publish the results, and so on. Those things we can do. At the most, you can take a call that after the quiz is closed, you may want to reveal only the marks. Okay, or if you want, I mean, it's entirely up to the policy of your department as to how you can do it. But this is the place where you can control that. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, there are so many question marks, you please go through them to know more. Okay. All right, I think these are the most important settings that you can do. You can always explore what are the other useful settings where you can do more restrictions and so on. If somebody is into administration side of the quiz, then you may want to look at this. Possibly I will give one additional restriction. We talk about layout and we talked about the grade, and let us see, yeah, so restrict access, extra restrictions. Let us look at one additional thing. If you want, you can set a specific password for the quiz. Okay, even even between the open time and the close time, you can set a specific password for this particular quiz. When they click on the open quiz, then this particular password they will be prompted for that. And it is generally a good practice. What we will do is, you can set the password and you can announce the password in the lab before the exam, or you can announce it, you can write it on the board, you can announce it on the microphone, or whatever be the setting. So this makes the quiz a lot more secure. Okay, so we looked at specifically 4 very useful options: timing, grade, layout, and then we looked at the review options and the extra restrictions on attempt. Okay, the question behavior is the last setting that I want to point out. So there is a specific option called shuffle within questions, which is specifically related to useful in the multiple choice questions. Okay, so if you want to shuffle within the question, so if you have options A, B, C and D at the time of creating the quiz, then when you say shuffle within the questions, students sitting adjacent to each other, each student will see the options in a random order. So this also is quite useful, especially when students are sitting very close to each other. So they will not be able to communicate the answers, which is in code word saying that A is the answer, B is the answer. So to avoid these kind of issues, then you can shuffle within the questions. And then at the time of adding the questions, we will have an additional option to shuffle the questions themselves, so that adjacent students will not see the same set of questions. Okay, so these are all the main settings for the quiz itself. So once we are satisfied with the settings, you can say save and display. Don't say save and return yet, because you will save and display because we are yet to add questions to this quiz. So we'll save and display. When I say save and display, this is what it will show. It will show that we have configured the quiz to 1 attempt. The quiz will not be available until Monday, 2nd March from between 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Okay. Incidentally, for the sake of demonstration, I wanted to set it from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. with buffer. So let us go and edit that. So I'll go and edit the setting. The quiz timing to be between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. so that I have a 1 hour buffer. I'll just go and save and display. So you will see that it has now updated to 2nd March 11 a.m. Time limit is 1 hour. But it also says that there is no questions have not been added. So to add the question, you have to edit quiz. So this may be a little confusing. So you can either click on edit quiz, or you can go to this gear icon and then click on it to say edit quiz. Many times people will get confused between edit settings and edit quiz. Edit settings will take you to the screen where you can set the timings and all these parameters, right? If you want to change these settings, you have to do edit settings. If you want to add questions, you have to use edit quiz. Okay, so please don't get confused. So I'll go ahead and click on edit quiz. I can click here or here. I would rather go and click it here. Okay, so now you will see that there are no quizzes that are added. So it says the quiz setting maximum grade is 10, total marks is 0. Okay, so what I can do is to add the question, I can add the questions from the question bank. Okay, so when I add the question from the question bank, this many questions are there in my question bank. Okay, lots of questions are there. You can choose. Remember when we added the questions to the question bank, we created categories. So you can filter based on categories. In the previous lecture, we created a new category. If I remember correctly, we called it as remember question. So we can say remember questions, and this is the category. We added 3 questions on capital of India and so on. So this is either you can filter it or you can choose, mix and match, do whatever, right? If you had created remember category, understand category, you can choose one question from the remember category, and then you can change the then you can say add selected questions to the quiz. You will add this. Then again you can click on add, add from question bank again. Again you can choose a different category. You can choose a different category and then add that. But let us continue. Go ahead with the same category. So what I'm going to do is by clicking on this one, I'm going to individually click, or you can click all of them. I'm going to add all these questions to the question bank. Okay. Now, if you have also created subcategories and so on, you can show questions from the subcategories. So you can ignore this. Also show old questions from this one. But for now, we are going to add all the 3 questions. Okay. So I'm saying add selected questions to the quiz. So you will see that all the 3 questions are there. So if you recall, you can see that this particular icon with the 3 dots is indicative that this is a MCQ question. We also have a descriptive question, which is list any 5 capital city names from various countries. And then I think it was supposed to be various states. And then we also have another multiple choice question. And it shows what is the number of marks. And the total number of marks for this quiz is 3 at this point in time. Okay, so what are the things that you can change? In the original question, you would have said that this is for 1 mark. That is essentially the default mark. But if you want to change, let us change that, because it's a little descriptive in nature. If you want, you can change it to 3 marks. You can press 3 and press enter. It changes to 3. Now the total marks for this quiz changes to 5. Okay, so when it says maximum grade is 10, it is just telling that originally you had intended to conduct a 10 mark quiz in my settings. Now you have added these marks for max marks for 5. You can just leave it at that. Then what will happen is when you actually conduct the quiz, this 5 marks will be scaled to 10 marks. Okay. Alternatively, you can add more questions to the quiz to make it to 10 marks. Okay. Or you can also do one more thing. You can just modify the question saying that, no, I don't want it to be for 10 marks. I will change it to 5 marks. You can change it and click on save. This save is going to only change it here. Okay. So what you will also notice here is that there is no separate save for after adding the question. Once you have added the questions, they are directly part of the quiz. Okay, so this is what you do. You can keep adding more questions. Interestingly, it also allows you to create new questions right from here. Okay, as a best practice, I would recommend that we should not do that. Adding the questions to the question bank can be a separate activity. And then you can choose subset of questions from the question bank when you are creating the quiz. Okay, so this is where it is. So we have added the questions. Now the last thing that we can do from the questions is that what we can do is we can do a preview. Okay, we have added the quiz. I recommend that we do a preview. Okay, so it says that there is a time limit. Your attempt will have a time limit and all that stuff. But the point I want to mention here is that as a teacher, you will be able to do a preview at any time. Whereas if I am a student, it will open the quiz only during that particular time. Okay, so I can start and it will start the attempt. So this is how the students will see the quiz. As you can see, we have we have set the quizzes. You can see all the questions, and what is the capital of India? We can say whatever. So this is your second opportunity to review your answers. If you remember, we added a multi-choice question. We can do that and finish your attempt. Okay. So this is what it is. It will say that these are the questions. You can return or you can submit all and finish. So, but anyway, this is just a preview. Okay, we can go back to the quiz. So one more setting which probably I did not do. Let us go back and do edit quiz. Okay, so one thing that you should also do, especially in an examination setting, is to shuffle the questions. Okay, what the shuffle the questions will do is that if there are multiple people who are attempting the quiz, each person will see the questions in a different order. When you combine that with the pagination, single page view of those questions, then and sequential, then this makes it the whole setup fairly secure. What are the things it is going to do? It is going to show only one question at a time, and since we have shuffled it, it is more probability, a high probability that they will be seeing, adjacent students will be seeing different set of questions. So copying from each other may get minimized, the likelihood gets reduced. And also we have said that set the setting to sequential. So when I move to the next question, there is no possibility that when my next student will be attempting, when I'm on question 3, my adjacent student will be answering some other question. And it is not possible for me to go back and tell that student what is the answer. So all this kind of care can be taken up with this particular setting. So we have done the shuffling. So I will save it. So now I'll go back to my course by clicking on Moodle demo. Now here you will see that the quiz is ready. Okay, and so in the next lecture we will see how do students actually take the quiz, and how will you look at the results, how do you download the results, and so on.